On this episode of the Soul Twin Stars podcast.
We don't have to look at those layers, just look at the beautiful cake on the outside. And I'm done with that.
Yeah, I have empathy for everyone,
Yes.
but nobody's going to cross my boundaries.
And it doesn't even have to be extreme emotional or physical abuse. Literally, it could just be like a lot of negating you and your opinions and who you are.
And there's two options for people who are suffering with dysfunctional families and trying to decide. One is creating healthy boundaries, stepping away. The other is going no contact.
Hi, I'm Lady Shadow, a witch with much to share, stirring the cauldron with magical self-care.
Hi, I'm Peaceful Nik, a medium divine. I chat with the dead and interpret every sign.
We are Soul Twin Stars, best friends through it all.
From spells to healing, we're answering the call.
From moon cycles to menopause and making peace with the dead.
We aren't afraid to talk about what's rarely said.
So tune in each week to get raw, real, and wise.
Let's talk about a spiritual life with absolutely no disguise. Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast, Uninhibited Spirituality. Peaceful Nik and Lady Shadow here. We would like to first and foremost thank our sponsors for this episode. Thank you to Nadine Gordon-Taylor, intuitive artist, author, speaker, and teacher. She's also the visionary creator behind a series of soul-stirring oracle decks, including the Animal Love Oracle cards, the Heart Path Oracle, the Crystal Clear Oracle deck, and the highly anticipated Plant Spirits Oracle, arriving this fall of 2025. Her work blends mystical insight with artistic mastery, offering tools that inspire a deep connection and inner wisdom. Explore her full collection at thirdeyestudio.com, THIRD.istudio.com, or experience her magic in person at her beautiful Peekskill, New York storefront, the Third Eye Studio. To purchase her oracle decks, please visit innertraditions.com. Also, thank you to Beans and Buttercream Bakery. Delicious homemade treats shipped anywhere. Call 417-973-2352. And Abernathy Photography, based in southwestern Kentucky, a professional and stellar company providing drone photography in both local and destination weddings. Visit abernathyphotography.com. Author Mary Ray's self-reflection workbook on conquering shame and guilt, Tell the Devil to Go to Hell, an interactive memoir, is available on Amazon.com. Craving delicious Italian cuisine? You can find it right here in Westchester County, New York at Fino Restaurant, that's F-I-N-O, restaurant at One Baltic Place in Croton-on-Hudson, New York. All of our sponsors are linked up on our Soul Twin Stars podcast Facebook page, and we thank them for making this podcast possible. And now, back to our episode.
Welcome back to the Soul Twin Stars podcast. I'm the resident medium, Peaceful Nik, and we have the wonderful and beautiful...
Flying in on her broomstick again for my parking space out front, the resident love-based witch.
Love-based witch, the white witch with the red flaming hair. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are so excited to have you back. We have a show full of knowledge, wisdom, and spirituality tonight, and we couldn't be happier to have you here with us. Tonight, we're going to talk about family and issues and all that comes with it. And at first, I want to talk about our upcoming events. We have two major upcoming events, one in Savannah, Georgia in February 2026. We have a paranormal convention. Stay tuned for venue and exact dates. And in September or October 2026, we will be in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for another paranormal convention. Both of these conventions will have ghost hunts, vendors, advertisers. We will have crystal sales. We will have readers. We will have guest speakers. It's going to be incredible. Keep an eye on all our socials for all of the upcoming details. Tonight, we're going to talk about our divine moments. And everyone who watches my social media stories knows I have an obsession with taking pictures of the sky. And I have had the most wonderful thunderstorms the last couple of days. And my husband is so sweet because when I'm recording or in a reading, he'll go outside and take pictures of the beautiful sky for me. So some of those pictures are credited to my wonderful hubby because he knows how much the sky means to me. How about you, Lady Shadow? What's going on for you?
I can just say that I'm so jealous that you are getting all the storms and we are getting all the boring 85-degree weather. Nothing exciting to talk about here. I wish I could say that I saw lightning in the last 7 days or heard some rumbles. Nothing. You know, I'm obsessed with storms. I'm so disappointed. So, my divine moment is actually coming from, like you're saying, the sky watching. I have had so many clear skies because of the lack of storms and lack of rain that I have been just constantly seeing these wild anomalies. They're not shooting stars, they're not fireballs. And I've talked about this in other episodes. I see these bizarre flashers. And I'm one of those people that is up all night long. So because I work until, 5 in the morning and I have the world to myself and I go outside occasionally, get some air, ground with my feet. Even if it's in the middle of the night, I go right out into my yard and do some grounding. And Chris and I like to look up at the sky and sometimes we take night swims and we admire, our beautiful Gaia. And I will be saying something to him or to myself, and I'll look up and I'll see this, I guess, a flasher. I mean, it looks like a 3 times bright star sitting there. And I'm like, that's a really bright star. That's nothing moving in the sky. That's not a plane. It's not a train. It's not an automobile. What the heck is it? And then it'll brighten up a little bit more, and then it'll just poof, go out like a firework. Literally, like it just turns itself on and then it just turns itself off. And it's these that I have been seeing lately have been showing up right under the Big Dipper, like between the two bottom stars. It's the most bizarre thing. So, not in the same place at every time, but in different spots. So, when I get a little divine twinkle or a nod or a wink from a star, I just assume that, you know what, it's something looking after me and I'll talk to it. And of course, I'll say, if you are having my best good, please continue to show up for me. If you are nefarious or an alien spying on me, then you can just go on your way, go to the next bus stop. Thank you.
That's fine. If aliens were spying on us, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with aliens spying on us. And if they're out there, I'm sure they are spying on us and thinking, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Let's just.
Well, here's the thing, Nik. I've kind of studied the different races of aliens. It's fascinating, and you can get this information online. It's kind of cool based on people's witnessing, testimonies. And there are a few races that you don't want to fuck with, and that you don't want them to fly by your house and drop you a cheeseburger from the cosmos. Um, and there are really good ones too. There are also really gentle races who have our best interest at heart. Just like with people, there are nice people and there are negative people. And I could imagine that the universe is polarizing just like the way we were built, because I mean, it can't be all nice and it can't be all mean. It's got to be somewhere in the middle there.
I think that's a great subject, and we should do an entire podcast just on that. So let's take a note of that because I am under the impression, now neither of us know what's right or wrong here, but I'm under the impression because of humanity's sociological immaturity
Mhm.
that we are likely to destroy ourselves before we have the technology to travel to another star system. So there are physicists that theorize that, I think Dr. Michio Kaku talks about this, that if a civilization is as ignorant as we are socially, they will never achieve interstellar travel. Now, I don't know if your viewpoint is correct or if Dr. Michio Kaku's viewpoint is correct, but humans, we're not doing that great. So I don't know if we're ever going to make interstellar travel happen. So I think we should talk further about this another time for sure. Audience, let us know if you're interested in that subject.
Agreed. Either way, a divine moment is what you make of it.
Absolutely. Aliens, no aliens.
Stars, no stars, planes, no planes. It is what.
Clouds, thunderstorms, whatever it is. Oh, I just thought of another divine moment. Do you mind if I share?
Of course, I don't mind.
Okay, so this is a little off the subject of what we were just talking about, but I have always been petrified and anxious to give mediumship readings to people I know. And
Hmm.
I have a very good friend, and the reason is because I know them and I don't want them to think that I am cheating
Yes.
and using the knowledge I already have to give a reading. Okay. So last night I had a friend who's sort of a friend that I know through a job I used to have and asked me for a reading. And I told her, I said, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious. But I called in my guides and I did my meditation and sitting in the power. And I said, please, please, let me do a really good job. Please make the information streamlined. I really want to help this person heal. And lo and behold, it was one of the best readings I've done in the last month. I literally drew a picture of her mother with her glasses on and a framed picture of her parents on my notepad before she even popped into the reading. And I have never seen pictures of them ever anywhere. And I was just like, wow, Spirit really had my back because this woman really, really needed healing. And she was so, so grateful. And it was just like, it was kind of a tipping point for me as far as having confidence doing readings for people I know because I got information that I wouldn't know, have no way of having. So that was a pretty special moment for me this week.
That is spectacular and on so many levels. And plus, every time you exercise your spiritual muscles in new territory, you're developing these skills with now drawing people more often and getting better at it, I'm sure. And all of these extra signs and talents means that you're going to be in the top 10 mediums of the entire world soon.
I, I don't know if I sort of want to stay a little incognito, but okay, I'll take top 10. I'll take top 10.
Well, we're both going to blow up in our own different ways. It's just inevitable because we're very driven and we're also staying true to what our mission is on this planet. And I think that the more people we touch with our authenticity and our paths, that the world can only become a better place because we only have the best interests for everyone in mind. And I think that that energy flows out into the universe and then allows even more flow on top of flow for people to be touched and inspired by that. And then we can inspire other leaders to come forward and other followers becoming leaders. And it's just a wonderful, exciting wave of the future for all of us to turn and flip, like you were saying, giving humanity the help that it needs to grow up a little, to evolve a bit more. And you and I had talked about the Bible before, right? In another episode where the people are just in these bad habits of doing the same things over and over, being stuck in loops and patterns, which segues us perfectly into our next topic, breaking family toxicity loops that we've all encountered and probably have experienced these patterns with different family members over our lives, right? And
Yep.
break those things and to look at them and honestly, for anyone in a family, even if it's just one, to stand up and say, okay, this is really dysfunctional. We have to stop this. And we have to start breaking patterns in general that are not healthy for us or for society.
I was thinking of the exact same segue you were at the exact same time.
Of course you were.
And it's like we're psychic or something.
And it's like
And
we're best friends or something.
I know I have seen a meme that explains what you and I have both experienced in our family. And that is the child of the family that is the closest to the toxic parent is the one that the toxic parent knows they can draw into their dysfunction.
Yep.
The child that is the furthest from the toxic parent is the child that is trying to escape the toxicity.
Yes.
And we both fall into that latter category. We both have stepped back tremendously from associating with toxic family members.
Agreed. Agreed. Because also it's a feeling universe, right? Everything is not just emotional, but it's vibration. We talk about this all the time. Alignment, vibration. When something's off in your body, it's not just I'm having a moment or I'm being emotional. No, it's
Right.
because your body is trying to resonate all the time to its default place of you're loved, you're perfect as you are, you're whole. There's no inherited sin like we've been taught and all of that, that we have to carry the burden just because we were born as a human, because we're imperfect, right? No, we're
Right.
perfectly perfect. So, this whole idea that we have to subscribe to, well, it's just how it is in this family. We're going to just suffer through it. That's what we do. We suffer. That's what we're here for, is a bunch of hogwash.
Absolutely.
How can we shine our bright light onto the world and do what we really want to do and love who we want to love and how we want to love if we are locked into toxic, poisonous loops? And
Exactly.
someone has to stop it. And you and I have several times stepped into our family dynamics and said, enough is fucking enough.
Absolutely. And normally, the most toxic parent in a family is the one everybody is always trying to appease.
Yes, it's
Because
like the bully on the playground.
exactly, don't make the bully mad, but family dynamics make it so we don't really notice that when we're growing up until later. Now, personally, I always noticed the crazy in my family from day one. And I
Yes.
I know you've talked about this before. You were the same way.
Yep.
And family issues are every family has issues. There's not a family on earth that's not dysfunctional in some way, form, or fashion. Some are severely dysfunctional, some are moderately dysfunctional, and everybody else is a little bit in between. But most people don't realize if they grow up in a family of dysfunction and toxicity that it's toxic until they encounter other families that aren't as toxic. And then it's like, oh my God, these people
Agreed.
are nice to each other, or nobody's beating anybody up in this house, or nobody's drunk all day, or
Right.
snorting cocaine off the counter, or cooking crack in the microwave. Like that doesn't happen in this house. Wow.
And it even doesn't have to be that extreme. I mean, oh my gosh, so many of us go through a dysfunctional city, right? But it doesn't even have to be that bad to be that bad,
Right.
right? It could literally just be a narcissistic parent
Yeah.
or someone that enables one child over the other because of their neediness and their addictions. And so all the attention goes to the one child that seemingly needs more attention because they haven't dealt with the issues. And then the other two kids who are doing great, or the other three kids that are often being productive, it's like then it becomes that the loop and the patterns all center around not just the parent, but now the enabling child and the enabling parent, back and forth, back and forth.
There's a name for that because I have people that I am aware of in my life that have something called emotional incest, where, and that's a word a term I had not heard until about 6 months ago. And it made me think of a couple of people I know that I know personally. They are so enmeshed in dysfunction that it's like a dysfunctional marriage, a codependent marriage, but they're not spouses.
Right.
They're parent and child. And it's really quite toxic, and it's more common when you start thinking about the people you know. And I hear a lot of stories about parent and child relationships that are like this, where it's just I mean, it's unbelievable, the toxicity and dependency and the blinders. This is the key for me. The parent has blinders on that are so thick that they believe everything the toxic child is telling them and do everything that they want them to do and disregard anything else that is happening that anyone else tells them or brings them awareness to them about this situation. They absolutely ignore it and they just hone in on this one adult child as if the sun rises and sets in their eyes, when it's just as obvious as it can be, is so toxic and bad.
And it's not just between parent and child. It can be sibling to sibling,
Yeah. Yeah.
grandparent to grandchild, grandparent to parent. Like it can be any of those combinations, right?
Yes.
And what's really disturbing is this is what I really love about you, for instance. You love your children so much, but you're able to step back as a spiritually evolved woman and say, okay, here's the dynamic that's going on even with my sons. I can look at it objectively. They are not perfect. It's not like they do no wrong, right? You're able to look at it objectively. And this is how and why I look up to your parenting skills, because you don't just accept that, well, they're my children and so they're perfect. They have flaws too. And you can help them along the way, even in through adulthood, to correct even patterns that you subliminally or accidentally carried into their relationship with you from childhood, so that you can repair that and keep correcting patterns. I mean, we're always self-correcting and community correcting. And, this is just, it's an ongoing growth process, right? It's constantly evolving, just keeping our spiritual inventory in check and continuing self-awareness. I have a friend out in Long Island, a family friend that has 3 children. And one of them got kicked out of school and convinced mom that, no, that wasn't me. That was my friend. That was a whole isolated incident, mom. I didn't do it. I guess this kid's around 12 years old. And then she put him in another school, went through all this trouble to get him into another school. And then it happened again. Another problem. Oh, he got kicked out. This teacher just didn't like him. It was this situation, that situation, blamed a new friend all over again. This happened 4 times. This poor kid got bounced around and kicked out of 4 different schools, and it was never her son's problem, right? She refused to look at it that it was her son, that it was always some outside source because he's perfect, he's smart, there's no way this could be him. Yes, the blinders were back. And the poor kid is going to be 14, and he's become a very rebellious, I'm not doing anything you tell me to do. You set this up for me to fail by putting me in all these different schools. It was never my fault in the first place. So, and of course, what do you know? Lo and behold, she still believes him. But you're not doing your children any justice by not being honest and open and self-aware about what it's like to feel and live and be responsible in this physical world as a human being in growth and progress. We have to continually remind our youth and our fellow adults that we have to stay aware and in check and try to be open to making things better.
I agree completely. And I want to thank you for that compliment very much. It's very meaningful to me. Now, I will say my granddaughter is perfect, but
of course,
she's 4 months old, so we've got time.
We've got time.
But I will say I did not just naturally become this type of parent. 2 things happened. Both of my parents were extremely dysfunctional. Both of them were alcoholics/addicts. My mother died in 86. My father's still living. We do not have a close relationship. It's, talk a couple times on the phone a year. That's about it. And I want to say my goal when I had kids was not to do what my parents did. I actually named my son, my oldest was inspired by a Pearl Jam song. His name was inspired by the song Jeremy. His name's Jeremiah, but inspired by that song because that song was about a child who had an extremely dysfunctional family. And it was a daily reminder to me not to repeat the mistakes of my parents. And the child and the kid in the song offed himself in class. It's a whole thing. You can look it up. It was a true story they wrote the song about. I wanted to make sure I had a daily reminder because, sometimes we go off the rails. So that's number one. Number two, I received the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle in 2014. My kids were teenagers at the time. I wish I would have read it earlier. And I also bought the book, The Conscious Parent by Dr. Shafali Sabari, which changed everything I knew about parenting. It is the parenting guidebook, how your relationship with your kids should change over time. Not, you can't treat your 30-year-old like a 15-year-old, which a lot of parents do. And so it's also about seeing a child's needs and being consciously aware of them, not babying them and being too soft on them, but using a perspective of what if I was this child, what would I need in this situation? If a child is screaming and crying in a restaurant, are they just being a brat? No, they need something. What is it that they need? How can you address it in a way that you understand? They're probably overstimulated. Maybe you shouldn't be at a loud restaurant for 2 hours. Maybe they just need some quiet time, So that book, those two books really changed my life. And I highly recommend both of those books to anybody who's a human or a parent, because it's not just about developing relationships with your own kids, but teachers should read it, grandparents should read it. Everyone should read these books because it's a different perspective. It's things we sort of know intuitively, but it's explained in a much more clear way so we can understand how to deal with other people.
And there's this whole system that we live in, right? That's pretty corrupt, pretty dark overall, pretty backwards. And I feel like the fact that when someone gets pregnant, oh, congratulations, it's all going to be magical. But then there's no universal way to teach a parent how to raise a really decent human being in a really healthy environment. Now, I know that most families are dysfunctional. To what level of dysfunction you're going to be dished out, we don't know. But we all know that most families are dysfunctional. But I think it's also universally an issue that no one can agree on. Well, maybe like you're going to go to school for all these years and you go to college and you buy a car and you learn how to work at a job. Just maybe a parent who has no idea what to do with this new baby should maybe be given some sort of universal spiritual, physical, emotional manual or a class or something. I know that they exist now, but over the years, it was like you just go through it and you just figure it out on your own like everyone else has. But has that really worked? Have we really improved as a society and through our communities really since like the Little House on the Prairie days where it was the same thing? You have your baby in the yard in the chicken pen and you walk inside and you just wing it, We should have vast improvements, educational resources, spiritual resources to help parents make better decisions along the way. And so I feel like it starts kind of there. Like, why isn't the system giving us those tools, but yet they're saying, go out and have babies. And by the way, in half of the states in the United States, you can't have an abortion.
Exactly what those were the next words out of my mouth. Now we're forcing girls and women to have babies to continue the generational trauma that they haven't even healed from. And I will tell you this, when I had my kids, I wanted my kids. They were planned and I was not healed. And I wish I would have been healed. I was in my late 20s and there are dysfunctional patterns I repeated, not, horrible. I wasn't an alcoholic and I wasn't abusive or anything, but just other things that I repeated. And it took me years to realize, oh, I can't put that on my kids. Generation to generation to generation, the trauma, trauma, trauma. My dad's a boomer. I'm Gen X. I'm not really sure. I think my kids are millennials. I'm not 100% sure. But it's like my goal was to stop the generational trauma. And my son was talking so lovingly about being a dad the other day to my husband and said, I look in my daughter's eyes and I can't imagine how anyone could ever hurt a child. And I
Agreed.
said, I could die happy right now. That was my goal.
Absolutely. And you know what? Aside from any of the little issues and humps that he's going to go through in his life, you're right. If you can say that to another human being, that unconditional love, and have that connection like that, you have done your damn job pretty darn good. So you should be very proud.
It was my goal, and that was my biggest goal. And
I love it.
my husband, I will say, no marriage is perfect, no family is perfect, blah, 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 the whole spiel. My husband was a very attentive and involved father. Not that he was perfect, but he spent enormous amounts of time with our boys. He taught them everything he knew about everything he knew about, and they are much better for it. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, God, can you imagine if we would have gotten divorced and I raised them by myself? I wouldn't have known to teach them all that stuff. Like,
Right.
they would have been sitting in the house pale. I didn't know all the stuff he knew. And so
Yeah.
I'm always grateful that, he taught them how to lift weights and how to do athletic things and manly stuff that I didn't know about. So I was, I'm not putting anybody down if they don't do all that. I'm just saying that was my experience.
And then when we enter into adulthood, like we jump forward all these years and kids are grown and living their lives. And even I am right now in a firestorm of family drama. And whew, it's so difficult, especially when you're self-aware of the patterns. And the patterns emerge when you least expect it, because you'll just be going along having a relationship with a parent or a sibling, and you catch a snag, and then there's some crazy drama. And the spiritual side of you wants to just forgive and forget and move on and just pretend it never happened. However, when you do that, it continues the loop. And at some point, someone has to say, listen, my self preservation is more important than continuing a pattern that is really toxic to not just the person involved, but to the ripple effect of the other family members that have to absorb that. As adults like you and I, we've had issues with siblings and parents throughout our years and whatnot. And what would be, and I'll reveal my kind of tactic to deal with this, what would be your tactics when you come across, as an adult now, old family loops, patterns that are either rearing their ugly heads out of nowhere or have not yet been broken? How do you deal with that as a spiritual woman now? How would you put forth proper boundaries without feeling guilty or the shame of the family loop? And also remember, we didn't choose our family. Now, when we choose our friends, it's a very different situation than being forced in this idea that you have a contract with these people because they brought you here. But that doesn't mean you are obligated in any way to fulfill any contract that requires you to be emotionally suffering, physically suffering, in pain, or to the detriment of your own soul if you don't get along with certain people in your family, right? So we have to be able to discern a proper route and a behavior change or boundaries, like I was saying, to remain sane on our path and still functioning in the world in which we are choosing emotionally and physically with or without that person. I can tell you right now, anybody listening to this can name at least one family member that is giving them a sleepless night right now with their drama.
I rarely have sleepless nights about my siblings or my dad and stepmom. That's very, 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 very rare. I'll have sleepless nights. I have one of my sons is a type 1 diabetic. I get sleepless nights about that, but that's another story. I don't have that guilt feeling. Maybe I'm just not as nice as you are about my siblings and parents. I think because my birth order was fourth, 8 of us total. There's 5 full bios. I don't have that guilt feeling. I have a situation. I will tell you how I dealt with it. There's one sibling I talk to every single day out of 8, and the rest I don't really talk to hardly ever, if at all. Some of them I don't talk to at all. The one I do talk to, there was a situation over 40 years ago that was resolved. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, one of the bio sisters stirred it all up in the family again for no reason except I don't know, just was in a mood one day. She's a very dysfunctional, negative person. And she restirred up a situation from over 40 years ago and turned the whole family against the other sister. And nobody talks to her, and she's disabled, and I'm her only, real family that she talks to regularly, aside from my dad and stepmom occasionally. I handled it by calling both my older sisters and confronting them about the situation and explaining that, well, this one person in the family had this issue over 40 years ago and everybody was fine and it got resolved. And this other person in the family did horrendous, horrific, disgusting, horrible things to the entire family. And everybody's fine with that person and wants to have a relationship with them. And this person did bad things into adulthood for many decades. The other person was a little kid when something bad happened.
Yeah.
And you all are scapegoating this person, but you are revering the severe abuser when the severe abuser's never taken accountability. Why is that? And the response was, well, that's a personal decision.
And it is a personal decision because some people's tolerance in a family of a certain family member is much higher or lower than someone else. And the guilt I was speaking of is not just in general, or like even with me, but I mean in general. I'm sure there are a ton of listeners that are grappling with the guilt of having to go no contact with a family member or to put up any type of healthy boundaries that would piss that family member off. But for the one putting up the boundaries, it is a glorious feeling. But underneath the gloriousness is the adjustment of the programming that we should just suck it up, accept and love these people unconditionally, no matter how much hurt or drama or toxicity they dump out on you. And it's really hard to find that balance of peace finally when you can let someone go and it feels really good and there's no looking back anymore, right? That's, for a lot of us, it's hard to get to that final point. It's very easy for me to put down a boundary and stick to it. And I think, okay, well, how long am I going to keep this boundary for? Well, I'm not sure, because you have to go along and you have to live the situation out and evaluate again. But I have been finding that every time I put up a boundary and then drop it again, I'm telling you, within like a week, the loop starts all over again. And then I'm the one who's stuck forgiving and forgetting over and over. Meanwhile, I'm the scapegoat, or I'm the disposable one, and so it's like, wait a minute, this keeps happening. I think I might have to leave my boundaries up a little longer, or go like you did, Nik, and say, no, 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 yes, no, no, no to you.
Right. And I think we have different family dynamics that we grew up in. You grew up with your family. I didn't grow up with my dad and stepmom. I only lived with them for 2 years after my mom died. So I didn't get that same type of being drawn into the family dynamic and appeasing the narcissist, right? I wasn't there long enough to fall into that trap, because I was 15 when I moved in with my dad. So
Right.
I was already very independent minded, a FU mofo person. I didn't take any crap from anybody. I was already very emotionally developed for a 15-year-old after what I had been through in my life before that. And so I wasn't falling in that trap. And I can spot phoniness 100 miles away, and I wasn't falling for it. That's why I only stayed there for 2 years. And so your dynamic was different because you grew up with your family. I didn't. So I wasn't drawn in like that. And I'm very good at compartmentalizing my trauma. And it's a trauma response for sure. And I know it's probably not healthy, but I'm really good at putting something in a box and throwing it in the closet and being fine with it.
Yes. And I am too. And that's where we bonded when we first met, because we both came from very broken situations in a different way. And like you, I saw through the bullshit probably 6 years old, because that's when my mom first left my dad in the middle of the night and I never got to see him again. I think we talked about this in one of our previous podcasts. But since then, I was counting the minutes where I could leave the house and start my own life and put whatever I wanted to put behind me. And I spent a majority of my years living very far away from everybody and doing my own thing, keeping in touch when I felt necessary. And then the older I got, I became more forgiving, forgetting. But recently, a huge thing has hit the family now, and it's testing everyone's boundaries, and it's reverting everybody back to that original teen parent ridiculous behavior, those really old patterns that never got broken. And I thought, well, we can try to get along just to keep the peace, right? For surface peace. But then when you get together and you want to have a deeper conversation, all it does is set people off. Nobody wants to go deeper. Nobody wants to fix what's really broken. And so then we're all back at the same place. And like you, I see through it. I don't have time to go there. I want to be of service to everyone that I can, including people in my family. But at some point, I have to say, peace out. This is your stuff and this is my stuff. I got to go work on my stuff over here.
Yeah.
But it's challenging because, again, they try to lure you back and say, oh, no, it's fine now. But the thing is, they do it without even an apology.
Yeah.
So when I get lured back, I don't even get apologized to, or I don't even get to talk about what caused it in the first place. It's like, you don't talk about it. You just smooth it over like cake icing. Well, we don't have to look at those layers. Just look at the beautiful cake on the outside. And I'm done with that.
Yeah. And so in the old days, I would confront my family a little more brazenly than I would now. So that's the difference with my spiritual growth. I am a Sag Aries, fire, 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 very strong-willed, very honest, very confrontational. However, through my spiritual growth and emotional growth and years of therapy, I have realized I don't have to make a big scene about my confrontation. This is my big lesson. Ask myself, why am I saying this thing? Why am I confronting this? What is the purpose? Is it to edify me, or is it for the greater good? And I discern if it's just to make me feel good and egotistical, I choose to not say it. But if it is something very important that needs to be stated for, different reasons, then I will state it, but much more calmly and not a big scene.
Exactly.
I don't have to make a big scene anymore, and I choose more wisely. That's the biggest part of the change with my spiritual growth.
Yes, and me too. And I don't think I've ever been the confrontational type to, start dropping F-bombs and pulling the tablecloth out from underneath a turkey dinner just to go out with a bang. I've never done that kind of thing, but I'm a writer and I know how to express my feelings really clearly. And over the years, I'm able to, through words, say and write to people, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is how we can fix it. But then I never get a return letter that has the same thoughtfulness, openness, or the level of communication that I would ideally find healthy. And all I have to do is look back and say, oh, there's another pattern where I made all of this effort to express myself, but it went largely ignored. And there's this other thing that you and I talk about. We can't put expectations on people of which are not capable of understanding nor carrying out. It's kind of like a wizard talking to the wicked witch. There's going to be two vibrational misalignments going on there. So we can't have expectations that it's ever going to align, because you have people at two different growth levels, two different spiritual levels.
Yes.
So all you can do is have expectations for yourself in the moment, that what is the healthiest thing to do, knowing that that person probably can't even meet your expectations. And so, like you, as a spiritual person, I try to evaluate, okay, what are they capable of? What are they not? And then if they're not capable of taking accountability and continuing the narcissistic behavior where I am, for instance, the punching bag, well, then it's my fault. I need to walk away, because clearly if they're not understanding their behavior or they're doing anything wrong, no matter how many times I tell them, it's not going to change a thing. But what will change everything is me walking away to self-preserve. And that is the best thing you can do for yourself in that situation.
I agree. And there's two options for people who are suffering with dysfunctional families and trying to decide. One is creating healthy boundaries and stepping away. The other is going no contact. So the difference is you can create boundaries and not go to every family function every week or every month or whatever kind of schedule your family has. If you're uncomfortable and you feel like you want to vomit before you're going to a family function, you need to evaluate what can you do to make your life healthier? What boundaries can you put in place so you're not being tortured emotionally? You can put in boundaries and just step back and still be somewhat involved. But for some people, that doesn't work. And some people have to really completely go no contact. Some families are just not going to be amenable to your boundaries. And when your family crosses your boundaries and is still disrespectful, and trying to drag you into their drama when you're not interested in it, and abusive and toxic and narcissistic, and they just cannot respect your boundaries, that is something you need to consider going no contact for. I am not a therapist. I would definitely say if you are not sure what to do, get a therapist, somebody who's certified to help you navigate this. There's also a lot of self-help books out there, but get a real professional opinion about this to help navigate the situation.
And in order to navigate it, to even understand what your next step should be, it's really important to do the work for you. So you take your
Yes.
inventory. How do I
Yes.
feel around this person? How do I feel if going forward, like you said, do I want to hang out with this person? Do I find that this person adds to my life or makes it worse, harder, or more sad or more upsetting?
Yes.
And so maybe journal about that, take an inventory about that. I've done that over the years where I've weighed the pros and cons against going no contact temporarily or more long term, or setting boundaries. It has to start with you. And yes, a professional can help work through that, or even a spiritual professional, like a pastor or somebody at the
Yes.
church, or a spiritual life coach like you and I. So there are several ways to help you organize your thoughts and your feelings about being abused, feeling lesser than. And it doesn't even have to be extreme emotional or physical abuse. Literally, it could just be like a lot of negating you and your opinions and who you are. There's weird jealousies and competitive natures. There's all kinds of dynamics that you have to be able to define first, like what is tolerable. And I know for me, recently I've had to really reevaluate as well what new boundaries I'm going to put in place, because there have been some pretty clear patterns that I'm realizing that they just rear their ugly heads every like 5-year cycles. And it gets worse every cycle. That's what's going on too. And that often happens. And somebody's got to say enough of this cycle.
Right. And look out for family members trying to draw you into their drama, scapegoat you for their mistakes, blame you for anything, and trying to use you for clout. There are some families who will ride the coattails of another family member because maybe they have a little, fame or fortune or whatever. So just be wary of all of the different things that make you feel uneasy in your family, because there are so many issues that can be addressed. Some of them can be healed, but both people have to be willing to work on it. You can't have a one-sided relationship with a narcissist where you're just appeasing them and they're just bullying you, and you think because you're nice, they're going to be nicer. No, they're going to continue. They're going to continue to be a narcissist. So evaluate that. And it doesn't have to be, I want to clarify, just because somebody has personality traits of a narcissist doesn't mean they're full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And there's also some people on the autism spectrum or have Asperger's or somewhere on the spectrum have personality traits of narcissists. So kind of look up and evaluate, is this person a narcissist or are they just socially unaware because they're on the spectrum and they're not diagnosed? Because there's a lot of people that aren't diagnosed. I know I have autistic traits now that I'm an adult. I see that. But I didn't know that until the past couple of years. So just be aware, be well read, do research, find a therapist or a counselor or somebody to guide you through this. If you're struggling with your family members and you're considering, pulling back, putting up more boundaries, or even going no contact. And when someone says, if you decide to go no contact, and when they say, but it's your family, well, mother bleeper, you didn't grow up in my family. So you
Yeah.
don't know what I went through. So until you walk a mile in my shoes, don't judge me.
Yeah, that's the thing. I hate it when people go around with the blood is thicker than water stuff. A lot of my plays deal with this, that the theme of because they're your family, they'll always be there for you. The bonds are forever.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's actually the other way around. When
Yeah,
you are not choosing people and you are forced into these bonds, and a lot of times it's trauma bonding because again you're taking on the dysfunction of generations before that, or whatever the dynamic, favorites. Every family has favorites and plays that little game where there's like I said, two enablers over here, and these two are the bullies in a pod, while there's always a sibling that's left or misread or not understood or left behind for whatever reason, or the personalities don't mesh. It's really your individual journey. Your chosen family is just as important, if not more, because you're choosing them, and you have a right to choose your biological family just as you get to choose your friends. And if you don't choose to invest in those relationships, you have every right to say no thank you and to go find people that will love you and unconditionally support you, make your life more
absolutely.
fulfilling. Yeah.
And I will tell you this unequivocally. As I have become more active on social media and gotten a bigger following on social media over the years, I will tell you that my followers, subscribers, the people on the internet, strangers that I've never met, support me a million times more than any of my biological family, except for my one sister. My biological family could care less. They're not listening. They don't know what's going on.
I would agree with that. I am one of the few people in my family who decided to go live my dreams full on throttle. We're going for it. I will not compromise my life or my career choices. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. And I made that happen, came to New York, still doing it. And that really pisses a lot of people off, that somehow you found a path to go do something that's really fun for a living, but not me.
right.
But that is the flack that we get, I think, when we make choices that other people wish they made, but that's no fault of yours and no fault of mine.
It's the fear that they will fail. That's why they don't make the leap. And that's where the jealousy comes in, because they wish they had that freedom. They're programmed, like you were saying earlier, they're programmed to believe they have to stay in, the 9 to 5.
Right. And the question remains, do we allow their fears to materialize as bad behavior and abusive behavior to other people?
I have empathy for everyone, but
Yes.
nobody's going to cross my boundaries.
There you go. And on that note, the boundary is we are out of time.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I hope you're not depressed now. This is some heavy stuff, but it's very important because everybody has a family story.
There's a way out as well. There is always a trap door. Look for it. There's a trap door to peace and tranquility, harmony and balance. And however you need to get to it, just open your heart and it will find you. Just allow it.
Thank you all so much. See you next week. We love you all.
Thank you so much for joining us this episode for the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Find us on our podcast Facebook page for Magical Mondays live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will help you magically slay your weekdays, and for awesome giveaways. For more information about what other spiritual things Nik and I do and offer, visit peacefulnikthemedium.com. That's Nik with just a K. Or to connect with me, Lady Shadow, soulsandspirits.com is the place to go. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, we would absolutely love that. Contact us at soultwinstars@gmail.com. See you next Friday. I'm on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Facebook, and on YouTube. Sending you all so many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, know that you are all cherished.